Okay, so welcome to the deep dive. And today, we're going to kind of look at something that maybe you can relate to, or at least someone you know, and
Mm.
that is introversion.
Introversion. Such a fascinating topic.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things where, everyone kind of has an idea about what it means to be an introvert,
Right. Everyone thinks they know.
but like, do we really though? That's kind of the question.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're going to do kind of a deep dive today, and we've got some really interesting sources to kind of pull from to really look at this idea of introversion.
So we've got an article from Psychology Today, which really kind of challenges the assumptions that we have about introversion.
Yeah.
And then we have this really cool piece from the Huff Post that kind of breaks down different types of introverts, which I think
Yeah.
is going to be really useful for listeners to kind of figure out like
Yeah.
where they fit in.
Yeah. Are you a social introvert? Are you a restrained introvert? Are you a thinking introvert? Like, there's different
All
flavors.
right.
And then also, we've got an article from Fast Company, which actually lists the top jobs for introverts in 2025.
Interesting.
So we're gonna kind of tie it all in.
I love that, the practicality of it.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
So I think like the big goal today is to really go beyond those labels and really explore what makes introversion so unique.
Absolutely.
And how it's actually perceived across different cultures.
Yeah.
Because it's not the same everywhere.
And it's not a bad thing.
Right, exactly.
It's not a negative thing to be introverted.
It's not a negative. Yeah, and there's so many strengths that come with it that I think often get overlooked.
Yeah,
So that's what we're gonna kind of unpack today.
I'm excited.
All right, let's do it.
So the Psychology Today article really starts out uh, with a great anecdote with a personal story
Okay.
from the author
Yeah.
who kind of considers themselves an introvert. And they took this psychometric test, which is basically an assessment that measures your potential in different areas.
Oh, okay.
It was inspired by a book called The Big Leap.
Okay.
And so their top area, their zone of genius,
Yeah.
was networking.
Wait,
Networking, I know, right?
That's like the opposite of what you think.
You would
Like
think.
when you think introvert.
You would think that an introvert would not be good at networking.
Yeah, you think like hiding in a corner at a party,
Exactly. Exactly.
but networking.
But networking. And so it really,
Oh,
makes you challenge your assumptions about what introversion is.
yeah, it definitely makes you kind of stop and think. Like,
Uh,
okay, maybe we have this wrong.
yeah, we have this image of introverts as being shy or antisocial.
Right.
But this story just totally, like, breaks that stereotype.
Yeah, it really does.
It's not about being antisocial.
Yeah.
It's about how a person gets their energy.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And so we'll explore that more later, but I think it's really important to address right away that introversion is not the same as shyness.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes me think how much of how we view introversion is actually shaped by our culture. Like what's considered introverted or extroverted.
Yeah, because it's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's different
It's not the same everywhere.
in different parts of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, like, for example, in the United States, there's this, like, huge emphasis on being outgoing and assertive.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be the life of the party.
The life of the party. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You have to be that person.
You got to be loud.
You have to, right, and that's kind of like the ideal.
Yeah.
But then you look at, like, some East Asian cultures, like in Japan or China,
Right.
and it's totally different.
Oh, interesting.
They actually value qualities that we associate with introversion,
Oh, wow.
like introspection and humility,
That's seen as a good thing.
as a good thing. So it really challenges your own biases about what's considered good social behavior.
Right, because what we think is like quote unquote normal might be completely different somewhere else.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I guess like if you're in a culture that really values like, individual achievement and speaking up, then of course those more extroverted traits are going to be seen as positive.
Of course. Of course. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's actually research that backs this up. So,
Really?
yeah, there was a study by McCrae back in 2005, and they looked at the big 5 personality traits
Okay.
across 51 different cultures.
Wow. Okay.
So for those who don't know, the big 5 personality traits, it's this well-known model in psychology that kind of looks at these 5 broad personality dimensions.
Okay.
And we're focusing on extroversion versus introversion.
Okay.
So they found significant differences in scores
Between cultures?
between cultures.
Okay.
Yeah, so like, for example, Latin American countries tended to score higher on extroversion,
Oh, interesting.
while East Asian countries scored lower. And then there's this other study by Alec and McCrae in 2004
Okay.
that actually linked higher levels of individualism in a country
Mm-hmm.
to higher average extroversion scores.
Oh, wow.
So it really shows that cultural values actually play a role in shaping what personality traits are seen as desirable.
That's so interesting because, yeah, like if your whole culture is kind of built around being, outspoken and independent, then of course those people who kind of exhibit those traits are going to be celebrated. You know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly.
It just makes sense.
Okay, so we've kind of started to like dismantle some of these long-held ideas about
Yeah.
introversion.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about, what the Psychology Today article refers to as superpowers of introverts.
Yes, I love that.
I like that.
That framing, it's so much more positive.
Right.
So instead of looking at what introverts lack, let's focus on their strengths.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the big superpowers that they highlight is this capacity for deep thinking and focus.
Oh.
So introverts often do really well when they can like immerse themselves in a subject
Right.
without distractions.
They can really like hyper-focus.
Focus, yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, think about it like when you've had your best ideas,
Yeah.
were you surrounded by people or were you in a quiet space?
Oh, yeah. Definitely in a quiet space.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about that deep thinking.
That's interesting, and that actually connects to what we know from the Harvard Grant study, right?
Oh, yes.
Which showed that introverts tend to have, fewer relationships, but those relationships are often much deeper and more meaningful.
Yes, quality over quantity, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It's not about having a ton of superficial connections.
Right.
It's about having those deep, meaningful bonds.
And then there's also this myth that introverts aren't good leaders.
Yeah, myth is so annoying.
I know.
So frustrating.
But like we know from research, including findings from the Harvard Business Review, that actually introverted leaders can be just as effective or even more effective
Yes.
than their extroverted counterparts.
Exactly.
So I'm curious, like, what does effective leadership look like for an introvert? Like,
Yeah.
how does that kind of, how's that different from maybe what we typically think of as leadership,
Right.
I mean, it's probably not like, all those big speeches all the time.
No, it's not about being the loudest voice in the room.
Right.
It's more about being a good listener,
Okay.
and carefully considering everyone's perspective
Okay.
before making a decision.
Like
thoughtful, deliberate,
Yeah.
and because they're often more comfortable observing,
Yeah.
they can actually create a really collaborative environment
Oh.
where their team members feel heard.
So it's kind of like, it's less about being the center of attention, and it's more about creating a space where everyone can kind of like contribute and feel valued.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
Yes, a different style of leadership,
Right.
but it can be really effective.
Very cool. Okay, so we've talked about leadership, but let's actually like really define introversion.
Yeah, let's get specific.
Because it seems like this whole idea of how someone recharges their energy
Yes.
is like central
right.
to understanding it. So
Right.
the Psychology Today article really like emphasizes that difference between introversion and shyness.
Yeah. Shyness is about anxiety or discomfort in social situations.
Okay.
Introversion is about how you recharge.
Okay.
So introverts, they find that social interaction, even if it's enjoyable, can be draining.
Yeah.
So they need time alone to recharge.
Okay.
Extroverts, on the other hand,
Yeah.
they get energy from being around people.
Oh, okay.
So it's really about where you get your energy from.
So someone who identifies as an introvert can still like enjoy going to parties or, being around people, but then they just need that time afterwards to kind of like decompress.
Exactly. They need that downtime.
Yeah. Okay, I get
To kind of process everything and recharge.
So this kind of brings us back to that whole networking zone of genius from the author.
Yes.
Because their idea of networking wasn't like the traditional like working the room kind of thing.
No, not at all.
Right.
It wasn't about being the loudest or the most outgoing.
Right.
It was about appreciating people's talents.
Oh, okay.
And connecting people who could benefit from knowing each other.
So it's more about like making those kind of one-on-one connections.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Like really understanding people on a deeper level.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that aligns perfectly with introverted strengths,
Right.
like
Right.
being observant, thoughtful,
Yeah, yeah.
and building those deep connections.
Okay, so it's clear that like introversion is a lot more complex
Much more
than we initially might think.
than those stereotypes suggest.
Yeah, and the HuffPost article kind of dives into this idea that like introversion isn't a single category.
Right. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
There are different types.
And they actually introduce 4 different types of introverts.
Yes. Again.
Okay, so let's break those down.
Okay, so we have social introverts, thinking introverts, anxious introverts, and restrained introverts.
Okay, so let's start with social introverts.
Okay.
This kind of seems like what we were just talking about.
Yeah, so social introverts, like Rhea Freeman, who's a business coach mentioned in the article,
Okay.
she actually enjoys social situations,
Okay.
and she even does public speaking.
Interesting.
Yeah, but their introversion comes from a preference for small groups and familiar faces.
Okay.
So large gatherings can be overwhelming,
Makes sense.
and they need time to recharge after socializing, even if they had a good time.
Right.
And they might also prefer online communication,
Oh, okay.
which is like less energy intense.
Yeah.
So what kind of advice do therapists have for social introverts?
I'm curious. Yeah.
So it's all about self-awareness
Okay.
and setting boundaries.
Okay.
So engaging in smaller gatherings, scheduling downtime, and communicating your needs to loved ones.
So it's like know yourself and what you need,
Exactly.
and then don't be afraid to like communicate that to people.
Yes, because solitude is not a flaw.
Right.
It's a source of strength.
It's how you recharge.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
So next we have the thinking introvert.
Okay, this is the one with Fiona, right?
Yes, Fiona Fletcher-Reed.
Okay.
So thinking introverts, they're really focused on their inner worlds.
Okay.
They like to daydream. They like to reflect on ideas.
Okay.
They enjoy solitary activities like reading or writing.
Okay.
They get lost in their thoughts.
Okay.
And they get overwhelmed by like fast-paced discussions.
Yeah.
Like small talk.
Yeah, yeah, they need that time to like think it through.
Exactly. They need to process. So for Fiona, like she finds deep thinking and her tarot practice to be really fulfilling
Oh, wow.
and a way to process her thoughts.
That's so interesting. Okay, so for them it's less about like, being alone socially
Yeah.
and more about like having that time to process.
Yeah, they need that mental space.
Yeah.
So what therapists recommend
Yeah.
is finding a balance between engaging with the world
Okay.
and protecting that time for reflection.
Okay.
So schedule those solitary activities.
Okay.
Practice mindfulness when you are socializing,
Right.
and don't be afraid to share your insights when you're ready.
So it's like, you can still be social,
Yes,
but you need that time to like process and be in your head.
exactly.
Okay, cool.
All right, and then we have the anxious introvert,
Okay, and this was
Rachel McPherson.
and she talked about that, like pre-event anxiety.
Yes, that's a big one for anxious introverts.
Okay.
So they feel nervous and self-conscious before and during social events.
Okay.
And this can lead to avoiding social interaction
Oh, okay.
because of that fear of judgment.
Yeah, so it's not just about needing to recharge.
No,
There's like an anxiety component.
there's a real anxiety component.
Okay.
So they might overanalyze past interactions.
No, yeah.
And they feel more comfortable in familiar environments
Oh.
with people they trust.
Makes sense.
So Rachel, she tries to reframe her thinking
Okay.
and tell herself she'll have fun when she's there.
So it's like a coping mechanism.
Exactly. It's a way to manage that anxiety.
Okay.
So for anxious introverts,
Yeah.
therapists recommend gradual exposure to social situations,
Okay.
finding safe spaces and supportive people,
Yeah.
and often therapy is recommended,
Oh,
like cognitive behavioral therapy
Yeah.
or CBT,
okay.
which helps to identify and reframe those anxious thoughts.
So it's about like recognizing that the anxiety is there,
Yeah,
but then having like tools to deal with it.
exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, and then lastly, we have the restrained introvert.
Okay. And this was Erin.
Yes, Erin Mance.
Okay.
And she talked about feeling exhausted by unfamiliar situations.
Yeah. Yeah, that really resonated with me.
Yeah, so restrained introverts, they like to observe before participating. They need time to warm up.
Okay.
They don't like being put on the spot.
Oh, yeah.
And they value routine and predictability.
Okay.
They process information internally,
Okay.
and they might only share their thoughts when asked.
So they're not necessarily like shy,
No.
but they just need that time to like
Process.
process, yeah.
And they prefer planned events over spontaneous ones.
Okay.
and they often feel relieved when social interactions end.
Oh, okay.
Like a weight has been lifted.
So it's about like a slower pace of engagement?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So for restrained introverts, therapists recommend honoring that pace,
Okay.
surrounding yourself with people who appreciate you
Yeah.
and don't pressure you, gently challenging yourself to engage more when you're ready
Okay.
and communicating your needs.
So again, it's like knowing yourself
Yes.
and then communicating that to others.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's really important to remember that none of these types are better than others.
Right. They're just different.
They're just different ways of being an introvert.
Yeah. And being an introvert is not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
It's just different.
It's just a different way of being in the world.
And it comes with its own strengths.
Exactly.
Like we've been talking about, deep thinking, listening skills, empathy, creativity,
Yes.
Meaningful connections.
Yes. All those wonderful things.
Yeah. And there's this quote from Monica Coinard that I really like. She says, "You don't need to be the loudest in the room to make an impact."
Oh.
I love that quote.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so powerful.
And then there's another one from Caitlin Slavens about how introverts kind of remind us of the power of stillness and depth in a busy world.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really nice. It's a good reminder for all of us, I think.
Yeah, so we've really dug deep into what introversion is and isn't,
Yes.
explored how culture kind of influences how we see it, and we've really uncovered a lot of the strengths that introverts have.
Yes.
So let's shift our focus a bit and look at, the practical application of all of this, especially in the workplace.
Okay, yeah, let's talk careers.
Yeah, and we have that Fast Company article to guide us.
Yes, so the Fast Company article, it acknowledges that the modern workplace can sometimes feel like it's geared towards extroverts.
Right.
With all the open offices and meetings.
Yeah, constant collaboration.
Collaboration, yeah. But introverts can absolutely thrive.
Right.
If they find the right environment and roles
Yeah.
that align with their strengths.
Okay.
So the article highlights this list from Resume Genius
Yeah, okay.
of the top 10 introvert-friendly and well-paying jobs for 2025.
Oh.
And they didn't just, make this lift up.
Right.
They had specific criteria.
Oh, okay. What were they?
So they looked at the level of autonomy,
Okay.
the amount of social interaction required,
Okay.
a minimum salary of $48,000,
Okay.
and strong job growth potential.
Oh, okay. So real data.
Real data.
Yeah.
So they use data from Onenet, Glassdoor reviews, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics.
Okay.
So these jobs really emphasize independent work, problem solving, and analysis.
Which are all things that introverts tend to be good at.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's this quote from Nathan Soto from Resume Genius, who says that introverts can often be more independent in their work
Oh.
and have really valuable skills like focus and problem solving.
Yeah, if they're given the space to think.
Yeah, they just need that space.
Okay, cool.
So the top job on the list
Yeah?
is radiologist.
Oh, wow.
With a median salary of $353,960.
That's a lot.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And a projected job growth of 3%.
Okay.
So this requires an MD degree and a residency.
Okay.
And if you think about it, radiologists, they spend a lot of time independently analyzing images.
Right. Yeah.
So it really fits those thinking introvert qualities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, so number 2 is natural sciences manager
Okay.
with a median salary of $169,120
Right.
and 8% job growth.
Okay.
And this usually requires a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Tied for number 2 is computer and information research scientist.
Okay.
Same salary, but a much higher job growth of 26%.
Wow.
And this usually requires a master's degree.
Okay.
So again, these roles involve a lot of independent research.
Right. Very focused work.
Yeah. Okay. Number 4 is physicist and astronomer
Okay.
with a median salary of $149,530
Okay.
and 7% job growth.
Okay.
And this usually requires a doctoral degree.
Okay.
Number 5 is computer hardware engineer.
Okay.
With a median salary of $147,770.
Okay.
7% job growth.
Okay.
And usually a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Number 6 is software developer
Okay.
with a median salary of $138,110
Okay.
and 17% job growth.
Okay.
Usually a bachelor's degree.
So a lot of these are in the tech field.
Yeah, a lot of tech jobs.
Which makes sense because I feel like, with tech, you can kind of be in your own headspace a little bit.
Yeah, you can focus on your work
Yeah.
without needing to constantly interact with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so number 7 is computer network architect
Okay.
with a median salary of $133,930
Okay.
and 13% job growth,
Okay.
usually a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Number 8 is actuary,
Okay.
with a median salary of $132,500
Okay.
and 22% job growth,
Okay.
usually a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Number 9 is biochemist and biophysicist,
Okay.
with a median salary of $120,310,
Okay.
9% job growth,
Okay.
and usually a doctoral degree.
Okay.
And number 10 is operations research analyst,
Okay.
with a median salary of $95,600
Okay.
and 23% job growth,
Wow.
usually bachelor's degree.
Okay, so it's a pretty diverse range of fields.
Yeah.
But there's that common thread of like autonomy and focused work.
Yeah, and those are really valued skills.
Yeah.
So it shows that introverted strengths can be really valuable in the workplace.
Yeah, it's not just about like, schmoozing and being the loudest person in the room.
Not at all.
Right.
It's about those quieter skills that introverts bring to the table.
Yeah. Okay, so just to kind of wrap things up.
Yeah.
We've really explored how our understanding of introversion can be based on stereotypes.
Yeah.
We looked at how culture shapes those perceptions.
Right.
And we uncovered so many strengths that introverts have.
Yes.
And we even, defined introversion in a more accurate way and talked about the different types.
To 4 types?
And then we looked at how these strengths can translate into, successful careers.
Yeah, and good paying jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. What are your final thoughts on all of this?
I think it's just so important to remember that being an introvert is not a disadvantage.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of engaging with the world.
And it's equally valuable.
Equally valuable.
Yeah. And in a world that's so loud and demanding,
Yeah.
the quiet contributions of introverts are really important.
Yeah, and this has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It
It
has.
really makes you rethink, those labels that we tend to put on ourselves and others.
Yeah, it's about going beyond the labels
Yeah.
and appreciating the nuances.
Yeah, and I think a big takeaway for me is, to think about how this understanding of introversion can kind of reshape how we view ourselves.
Absolutely.
How we view our interactions with others, our work preferences, and even our personal growth.
Yeah, what strengths have we been overlooking?
Yeah.
Yourselves and in others.
That's a great question to ask.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive,
It's been a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.
See you later.